Welcome to Pony Fan Animations Behind the Scene. I am Hyperdash.
I'm CaptainHoers, and this plaintive face that we're currently holding on is drawn by me.
And I am Minty Root, and yeah, that's about it.
All right, so we're gonna start with Captain Horse. He's gonna we're gonna show his most recent animation. He's gonna go into a little presentation.
Okay, yeah, do it.
Honey, when the sun is low, that's when I feel your fire. I was ready to waste it all and learn to burn with desire. Now I don't think it lied to me. Still I read your eyes so desperately. And now the nights are long. You were lying to me so close, singing a misty song, smiling and astride me slow. What they can see so clear to me. Now I read your eyes incessantly. There's something in her way, cause we feel it to believe it. It calls me night and day, cause we feel it to believe it. And true, cause we feeling to believe it. There's something in her way, cause we feeling to believe it. It calls me night and day, cause we feeling to believe it.
Okay.
All right. So that was the thing we. So yeah, that's my most recent animation, and now I'm going to talk a bit about it with this nice little slide. So let me pull up my notes. I've accidentally covered them with Discord. Okay, so this is the visual language in my most recent animation aspects. Why am I talking about this? I've only got 20 minutes. Animation is complicated. I can't teach you how to use Flash in 20 minutes, nor should I. And most of what I'm talking about is transferable to other visual arts, which, if you're just drawing, composition, it's a useful skill to know. So, first things first, these are not necessarily rules, they're the guidelines. So, there will be times when you want to break them, and I do break them quite a bit in this animation. So, without further ado, this is just kind of a laundry list because, again, we're against the clock here, and I've got to give the floor to two other people. All right, so just first thing first, camera angle. So I had to go back to Spitfire's Day Off to find a shot that's an example of this. This shot is bad. The horizon line is high, and you're kind of looking. This kind of angle looks kind of like a security camera. It's boring. It sort of nullifies the motion and the drama in the scene. What you want to do is either have the horizon line really low, which creates, I don't fully know how to explain it. It's just nicer. Or to go back to Spitfire's Day Off, make the vertical angle so extreme that you got like the vertical perspective in it. And interesting enough, this is a tip I learned from a King of the Hill storyboard that I found somewhere and I haven't been able to find again. I wanted to have it in this presentation, but I couldn't find it. Though that said, I did find other stuff that's like you can actually find some of the internal documents that TV shows will use to guide their animators, just posted online. So there's resources out there. So the objective here is with your camera angles, to make things not look isometric, because that can lead to things like fighting game camera or RTS camera, which is dull because their point is to convey information clearly, not necessarily to convey it dramatically. So like this shot here from an animation I did years ago is just very flat and it's not good. Not good. You can do better. Screen direction. So when things move in the same direction from shot to shot, it smooths over cuts and it just makes things flow nicely. In a lot of Western animation, this is typically left to right, because in European languages, we read from left to right. In both Aspect and in Spitfire's Day Off, the direction is from right to left for weird reasons. In my mind, left to right is going out and right to left is going home. And in a sense, characters are returning home in both these animations. It's not that important. The direction is less important than being consistent for maintaining the flow. And there's times when you might actually want to break screen direction if you're trying to create a jarring sensation, though use with care. And sometimes it's just not possible to do this perfectly just because of reasons. Like in the highway section in Aspect, the car, it reverses direction, and then for a couple of shots where it's going from left to right. But it's mostly right to left. So directing the eye. The human eye naturally looks for faces, hands, text, contrast, motion, and follows lines. Like, I probably did not need to tell you where to look in this frame to find the important thing. And a lot of composition is just doing these kinds of tricks. So you can exploit this to make sure that the viewer is looking at what you want them to look at. So for this section of the dark in between part in the back half of the animation, you've got these bright signs with lots of text on them, and then as soon as the car passes them, it's just dark blackness, and it's that is where I want you to be looking to just get the point home. And it's just wow, it's dark out here. It's a very basic point. It's not hard to make, but oh god, there's a pony on the screen. Sorry, I got this. Yeah. What was the next one? Oh yeah. Yeah. Talk about directing the eye. Now you're directing the eye away from my presentation with this dancing pony. So there's a few funky tricks that I've done with this in the animation. So this highway scene here, you've got all the cars, all the light, they're all on the left. Just kind of that is where your eye will naturally go. It does not go to the shanty town that is beside the highway. And I don't know, social commentary, who knows? I'm just gonna claim that one. There's also this shot where all the lines and the motion is kind of trying to draw your eye into the middle, but all the faces and the text are on the outside, and it can confuse your eye, which is kind of the point of this scene. You're supposed to be overwhelmed by all the light and color. It's an overwhelming scene. Emphasis: this is just a more general case of here's some neat things you can do to make people pay attention to what you want them to pay attention to. So contrasting motion, a little hard to apply to still art, but you can imply it. So the plane and the car are going different directions in this one, and then the train and the car are also kind of going in different directions in this one. Also, color, yeah,
the contrast and color there.
Yeah, the horse is not exactly hiding on that train there. Negative space. I think I was going to have a whole subheading about negative space, but
I love these sequences in this animation. It's such a contrast from the Bright City.
I mean, the fact that you've got all this, light and noise for like the first, 1.5 minutes, and then you're just kind of like in the nothing. It's like a little backstory on this world. The sun has been gone for 40 years, and the world is kind of dying. Sorry to bring everything down a bit, but it's just like, oh yeah, that's happening.
Yeah, and you really get that feeling because there's not like any reflected light from the moon or anything. It's just pitch black.
Yeah, like I've kind of stylized this a bit. Like if we were being realistic about this part of the thing, the starlight would be reflecting on the snow because it's white and there's at least some light. But I've just kind of completely nixed that. There's no light. I also do this a lot with like the playing field, so to speak. So I had to point this out to a couple of people because they didn't notice it. When the music stops, the aspect ratio changes, for a little bit of a kick, just to drive home that I was listening to that song and now the car is off kind of feeling.
Yeah. Oh, that's so clever. I didn't notice that. But you feel it. That's good.
Yeah. But I do this with the comic that this is based on as well. So like this is from the one of the scenes that like the normal ratio is square, and then for some of the important scenes, it goes to a widescreen, and then for the climax of like the first part of the comic, it goes even wider screen. So it's just getting more and more
cinematic.
Cinematic isn't the right word, but you get the idea. Color coding, there's a whole lot you can go into here. I didn't do a whole lot of color coding in the animation, but color coding is a way to convey meaning. The main thing that I do with color coding in this animation is location. So Cangelot is green, Hoofington is like this kind of tealy cyan thing, and then Ponyville is like blue. But there's all kinds of neat things you can do with this, like the Breaking Bad is known for color coding costumes, and it's very subtle because it's not something you'd think would be a thing that you would do in a live action TV show with a fairly realistic setting, but it's like there's charts of it and it's neat. And callback. So a thing that's fairly prominent towards the end of this animation is we see these old Ponyville landmarks that are just kind of, time has worn on them, and it's it makes people compare what they're seeing with where they remember it from.
Does this timeline? Okay, I have to ask, and for the audience too. This timeline diverges from MLP canon before season 4.
With a lot of the things that I write, it diverges, mid season 3 really.
Okay.
I'm not gonna linger on that because it's a whole squirrely thing, but like you got the
just out of curiosity mostly for the audience, because the tree obviously is put in the castle in season 5.
Yeah. But you also got like the town square, and it's got like it's built up around it and stuff like that, and it's basically the whole it makes you compare. It's like well, this is what Ponyville is like now versus what you remember from the show. That's the whole point of this this contrast, and it's a thing you can do. I also had like a little personal callback here where I've got like the highway.
Yeah, the mattress barn.
The mattress barn, which it's just a Spitfire's Day Off reference.
Yeah. I noticed that. I like that.
Which I guess all that means is just like, yeah, I've grown as an artist since then. This is 5 years ago. Spitfire's Day Off is 5 years old. It's crazy. And I guess the last thing that I will linger on is that these kind of visual storytelling techniques, they don't just make your shots look better, they can also save you time. So to go back to the start, to call back to the start, if the whole thing about keeping the horizon line low, it increases the amount of sky you have in the frame, and sky is real easy to draw. There's nothing there. It's just
ask Minty
maybe some stars.
Ask Minty about rendering his clouds.
Wait, what?
I said ask Minty about rendering his clouds. I think he might disagree.
I'll talk about it later.
Yeah, well, I guess it depends on your techniques, but you can do it either way. Like Minty could point the camera at the ground to avoid having to render the clouds, whereas when I'm doing the clouds, it's just like a soft brush in Photoshop, and it takes me about 3 minutes. So, the directing the eye, the faces here, they're what call your attention. So you don't even look at the fact that the background is just blurry and repeating, and the car is a bit weird. Like, a car probably does not look like this from the inside. There's also the faces and the text and the lines just kind of draw your eye to the center of the frame here, and then the motion of the car is going to wipe it across to the next shot, which distracts you from the fact that the background is, the further away you get from the center of the frame, the simpler it gets. This Dairy Princess, I've had a lot of fun with that in my RPGs lately.
Yeah.
It's just 2 posters and some doors. That's it. Again, face and text distract from the fact that there is nothing behind that house. There's two blocks. That's it. Another shortcut technique, which isn't really related to any of the things that I've talked about, but is probably a good thing to mention, is I think I have this down as suggestion, which is just the using of, in this case, the bricks and the seams between bricks to imply that the whole surface is bricked, without having to draw all of it. This is a must if you're doing comics and animation, because you cannot just sit there and draw everything. Cars, they're just the same model of cars recolored, and some of them aren't even differently colored. They're just following the same path. It's a repeating symbol. Same here. Animating the cars going around the roundabout would be very tedious, so I don't do it. I just imply that it's a roundabout by having cars approaching and leaving. And just imply the existence of crowds with just I think 2 of those walking ponies are reuse, and one of them is just still, and also all the cars are reuse as well. This is basically the only way I can get an animation done in 35 days, which is all I have to work with. And I just ran out of things to talk about. I didn't really have a through line for this. Enjoy this bouncing pony.
I love the appeal of just the tiny little movements there. It's so simple, but it works so well.
Did it stop? Oh, I need to have PowerPoint up for it to bounce. Okay, we good.
All right.
There we go. Okay, so you see my screen?
Yep.
Yeah,
here we go.
Just like a gradient, like some circles.
There we go.
There we go. So my part is called Minty's Journey Through Technical Limitations and Getting Around of the. And when you do projects, you have a lot of technical limitations, be it time, your computer, just even sometimes the frame itself can be limiting. But when you do projects, you have to acknowledge those limitations. So I'm gonna start with a quote just to give you a good, just to start off well. The art challenges the technology, and the technology inspires the art, by John Lasseter, who was fired from Pixar. Oh wait, no, wrong quote.
I don't think it was
this one.
fired.
Flash crashed twice on me for using gradients. I don't understand.
Yep, that's Flash.
So yeah, a little bit of a backstory for me. One of the reasons why I got known in the fandom for making projects is I kind of lied to BronyCon by telling them I could animate ponies. Well, it wasn't a lie, just that at the time I didn't know a lot about animating ponies. I knew about how to animate in Flash, and I wanted to pull something off. So I created a little thing called Project Thundercloud. The project name was Project AIM for Animation is Magic, which was the name of the panel. And one time I went out for some food, and there was Thunderstruck on the radio, and just thought, well, no, wait, what about calling it Thundercloud? You know, you have a scene where you have Derpy being struck by lightning. Hey, that's not bad. It's not the best title ever, but you know, it was better than Project AIM.
Titles are hard.
So first Pony project animated in Flash, some sequences in 3D in Blender, since I knew some Blender because someone showed me how to do some Blender. And and you know, first limitation, I barely know how to animate ponies, and BronyCon is in 8 months. So how do I overcome it? You know, you have to make it in a way that if you can't animate it, you know, you have to work around it. So make it mostly a narration. That was the idea that I had at the time. Make it mostly narration because, you know, if you can't animate it, you can imply it through other shots that are easier to animate that convey the same idea. So, you know, you have a lot of shots, and if you look at them, for example, also my screen turned green, so it's kind of hard to see. But for example, there's a shot where you have just Derpy saying she got rejected from the Wonderbolt. So, and she says, yeah, it's because my vision. So you have just Spitfire and that eye shard. That's it. That conveyed it pretty well to the audience. I didn't have to worry too much. I didn't have to animate a whole sequence where you have Derpy failing a flying test. It works. It's not the best approach ever, but there's a bonus. You don't have to do lip sync. Except once, because there's the scene at the end where you recontextualize all the things that Derpy talks about as a monologue she's giving to Princess Celestia. So just the fact that Derpy talks in that scene, then you click, oh, she was talking the whole time there. And you didn't see it being animated, but your brain thinks it. And, you know, it worked fine. There was another limitation. You know, my characters look clumsy when moving. Because at the time I was not very good at animating characters. And my solution was very simple. You make it about Derpy hooves because she's clumsy. And, you know, over time you realize, you know, I get better. I get to learn how to make, you know, how to make animated characters that express better. And you want to push things. So, you know, a couple of years later, there's Luna's Determination. The project name was Moonbow. I blamed the Undertale fans because if you put anything with determination in it, they'll just scream X got determination. And I was kind of thinking, do I want to risk it? At the end, I was just thinking, yeah, sure. Worst case scenario,
the problem
delete
with titles
the comments.
Is negated when you're making an animation to a song.
It's the final big project that I animated in Flash. I didn't know at the time; it just happened. And you know, I had 3D environments because I was studying 3D at the time, and I really wanted to make environments that pop, had some depth and all. And the very first problem that happened is that 3D sequences take forever to render because of ray tracing. Yeah, at the time RTX was not even anyone's imagination. So you know, I had 3D environments that had some depth. For example, that opening shot that just, you know, I wanted environments that really felt like they popped, and I didn't want to budge out. And you already have the contradiction. You have the 3D sequences that take forever to render, and you have stupid me who wants those 3D camera movements. So what do you do? Solution number 1, do the 3D in a game engine. But at the time I didn't know much. I had a bad graphics card and didn't really know what I could do. So I was kind of stuck. I was thinking, no, it's not the best idea. Simpler lighting, you could, but then, you know, it's going to look like Flash, and you're going to think, well, why not just making it in Flash? It's going to be easier. And then I was thinking, okay, am I going to do just, like, take one frame and just, like, do a very slight zoom in, it's gonna be limiting. Oh wait, no, it's giving me an idea. I could paint over in Photoshop, and then I took some of those renders. I started painting over in Photoshop to get some ideas of what it could look like. Some experiments look better than others, and it's taking, well, at least it's a good idea to have Photoshop takes like 5 minutes to do sometimes. It's very easy. So, and I was thinking, well, I have something that looks good, and I have Z-depth. What if I took the Z-depth, which is basically a picture where it gets brighter as it gets farther away, and the brightness is literally the distance, so it's going to be over 1 at some points. I was thinking, well, what if I take that and I extrude, and after experimenting for a while, so I ended up with this, which is basically, let's see, which basically I could extrude and get some movements with some perspective like that. I was thinking, well, it's, you look at that and you're gonna take, hey, it's stupid.
It's stupid.
Yeah, that's what I
thought.
It's stupid.
Good enough.
Like, it's good enough, yeah.
You don't see too much some of the issues, like the weird stretching with corners, reflections will look weird, and movements will be mostly dolly in and out, but you make it part of the style.
All
So,
the dolly
you
shots.
compose with single point perspective, you limit reflections to a minimum, stick it mostly to dolly and limit pans, and you go with that. And one of the things I was thinking of is, well, let's go with get inspired by Renaissance paintings, where it's mostly 1 point perspective, because they were finally getting around to making good perspective in paintings. It's a lot of dark and light. It's a lot of contrast. So it makes you're gonna think, oh, it's boring framing, but your eye is clearly on the focus. It makes a much more striking image, and you go around with it. You can compose shots, and you have the characters walking around with that, and it worked. You have a limitation number 2. My laptop is way too slow for that, and I want to work on a project during the holidays. So, how to work on that? You bring the whole desktop with you for the holidays.
That's exactly what I did.
There was other limitations that are too boring to talk about, but you have then the Fall of the Trimmer, which is inspired by the comic of the same name. It's kind of like how movies treat comic book adaptations, where they look at some words of the comic book and they mostly just make something up. It's my first project animated in Tomb Room Harmony, and you have a whole new playground to work for that project. Good news number 1, render times still take forever, but I can outsource them, so I can have some 3D sequences with some fancy camera movements without that stretching. Good news number 2, Toon Boom can export layers separately, which has nothing to do with it. It's something I had to deal with in Luna's Determination that I kind of forgot to explore. That happens. But bad news number 1, the Celestia rig takes forever to render because of her mane and also her crown and chest piece, which are 3D models. And Toon Boom doesn't like them too much. So what I can do, the story is about her, despite not being in the title of the whole project. So you have the choice number 1, simplify the main. And you're gonna take, no, it's her main. It's supposed to be super fancy. If I simplify it, it's gonna look bad. And you want to make it movie style, and if you're not gonna have a main that looks movie style, So choice number 2, you make it part of style. So, good news number 1 of bad news number 1. You can simplify the Celestia rig when I need to cast shadows. So, I used it a lot because I didn't have to. I had some filters that were on the main that didn't affect the shape itself. So I could only just disable the sparkles. I could disable the colors. I could disable the outline. I could disable the outline for the 3D parts as well. So I abused it a lot. So I had this sequence where you had a shadow walking around, this sequence where a shadow talking, this sequence where a shadow walking, this sequence where a shadow a crack, and it's kind of on the nose, but good use number 2 of bad news number 1, it's symbolism. Because, it's Celestia casting her shadow on Sunset. Since it's Celestia recalling those things, she doesn't look at herself that much. And it's about Sunset Shimmer, so you see mostly Sunset Shimmer, which her rig was not as much of a nightmare to deal with. And if you look, you have those blue parts here that are all the scenes where Celestia is seen. All the black is where she's not seen at all. The light blue is when it's her shadow being seen. So that's a bit less than 50% of the animation where she's there. And I can just focus on Sunset Shimmer instead. So, you get around with that. It's doing less animation. Well, actually, you do more because I focus instead of another character. But, you work around that limitation. Bad news number 2. Things are shiny now. And flashback to the slide with that approach with doing the stretchy matte paintings. Reflections would look weird. Choice number 1. Take out the reflections. It's a movie about a magic mirror. I cannot take out reflections. Choice number 2. Make the reflection is not matte. Hey, look, I am learning. So yeah, the matte for the diffuse and the reflective part and their Z depth were separate.
Ooh.
So, you have reflection that will stretch on their own as reflection could stretch instead of stretching like the reflection was an image it was painted over on the ground because the Z depth doesn't care about that part. And then you combine the two with something really cool in Photoshop called linear dodge. So you combine the diffuse, the reflection, the volumetrics, and you get at the end this. Or do you? Because that was a mock-up I did in Photoshop to see if it would work. It looked like this in the final result. And there's some weird artifacts. For example, if you look at the bottom here, you have weird clipping with the hoof. You have some really weird lighting when you think about it. Like, she should be obscured. The rim light doesn't make any sense. But, it's good enough.
Yeah, I mean, the point of the rim light not making any sense, I mean, it doesn't make sense 90% of the time they use it in live-action movies, so...
Yeah. Bad news number 3. My new Toon Boom rig doesn't do back view well, because it's mostly just a 3D head that was made by layering a lot of layers. When you rotate it, it just breaks. So solution number 1, give up and go to Flash. No. No.
No, don't
solution
go back
number
to Flash.
2, budget.
Don't fall back into
Here.
darkness.
You don't see much of her head. It's at a different angle. It's covered by the cape she was wearing, which makes sense. It's not something I added just because she returns with that cape much later in Equestria Girls. You have this shot, for example, where the head is at an angle. It's mostly just a profile view that I squeezed a bit to get those angles. So I moved the hair, I moved the eye, I disabled one of the eye that was supposed to be obscured, and I went with it. So final thoughts. Those limitations, they set a lot how the project looks like in the final. You're gonna think, well, my vision was a bit different. I had a lot of different views of how things should go. For example, I'm thinking of actually, let me open up. Whoa, stupid. Let me. Seriously, my screen really goes black when I really don't want to.
Oh no.
Yeah. Actually, since I cannot open it right now, one of the things was with the Fall of Sunset Shimmer, the opening shot where you have Celestia and Luna, and Celestia just goes and turns and says, "I know." The whole thing was supposed to be a shot with a 3D camera movement. I actually posted it on Twitter. And at some point, I just realized, well, it's gonna look good, but I'd rather focus on other things. So the angle was changed to be just a single point perspective that would just zoom out, and it was it. And it was good enough for that. I don't want to say, I don't want to tell people to go with the good enough, because good enough is not. You want to thrive, and you want to make the best animation you can, but at times you're gonna have some points where the final result is not gonna be. The final result. Yeah. Yeah, I'm not the best for those final thoughts. I have like 2 minutes. No, actually, I got 1 minute more. Yeah, but what? Yeah, actually, since I stole time for you last panel, would be fair to let you end with more time. Yep.
Space. Pony. Yeah, not exactly the thing people think of when they think of the Disney Renaissance.
Hey, Hyper. People are telling the chat that they can't hear you.
That is a mistake of mine. I'm. I had it muted because I was typing. I had it muted because I was
guess
typing.
People can't hear Hyper. Oh dear.
Check will be.
I'm supposed to hear you. Okay, I'm gonna go back. Yeah, I'm gonna go back and do a very brief restart.
Well, I mean, you've only lost a minute.
Yeah,
so.
I'm gonna do a very brief restart. Okay, so you can actually hear me. Okay.
I'm seeing your response in the chat. Okay, yeah, we can hear you.
I am Hyperdash. I'm gonna do a little presentation, a little bit unorthodox, on 2D, 3D, and U, which is basically I'm going to look at some of the ways 2D and 3D animation were combined in the past, and then some of the ways it's been used in Friendship is Magic in the movie. And then I'm going to move on to some of my own work where I combine 2D and 3D with Pony fan animations. So if you don't know me, you might see my artwork or my comic around the fandom, and of course I do animation, otherwise I wouldn't be here. So without further ado, let's get into a brief history of 2D and 3D, supplementing 2D with 3D. And I realized that staring at this image for a minute and a half probably didn't actually convey the information that my voice did.
Staring at that
Yeah,
image.
it's like,
Well,
it's great.
All you heard is
Look at these images.
You know, me clicking and
yeah. So, The Great Mouse Detective was, as far as I know, the first feature film that used 3D animation. And actually used it in the Big Ben scene where they're fighting inside the clock tower, and they used it to render all the gears and stuff and keep the perspective correct through a bunch of crazy camera moves that would have just been impossibly laborious to do by hand. But the funny thing about saying that is that they still had to color and line and shade all of this stuff, all of these frames, by hand, because the computer wasn't able to render all of the color and the lighting and everything, so they had to do that by hand, and they only got the lines from the computer. Now, the next step forward with this technology was actually started with Rescuers Down Under, but that movie is it's a little bit obscure in the Disney canon, so I wasn't able to find any behind the scenes. Oh, there we go, too far forward. So I've got some behind the scenes from Beauty and the Beast. And if you can see my mouse cursor, you can see up here there's the wireframes, and I love. Right when I found out that my audio wasn't working, I was saying I love the wireframes of the characters here. They're so clunky. Look at Beast's head; it's just like an oval. Anyway, but they had the wireframe rendering, and then this is the first time they were actually able to render, at least for a feature film, render textures onto the 3D geometry, so they didn't need to do all this by hand. Which they had to do with The Great Mouse Detective. So, the next leap forward, or one of the next leaps forward, at least in Disney, because that's honestly the best resource, at least for getting behind-the-scenes stuff on, was a proprietary technology they had called Deep Canvas, which you might have heard of before. And what they did was they had 3D geometry, and they did digital painting that was projected onto the 3D geometry. So that instead of just having 3D textures that might feel a little bit... Oh yes, I see someone saying in the chat Rescuers Down Under is a severely underrated film. It is severely underrated. It's actually pretty good. I haven't seen it in a long time, but I remember really enjoying it as a child at least. But anyway, back to Tarzan. These are still all 2D animated characters, but with the digital painting on the 3D geometry, there was that it's like, you don't even think it's 3D at first. You think it's just a bunch of insane animators painting it over and over again, because it looks 2D. The shading looks 2D, the painting looks 2D, and it looks the same as the rest of the background paintings. It's just projected onto 3D geometry, which is really ingenious, and I'm actually disappointed we don't see stuff like that today. And then, let's see, the next thing we're going to is actually not a Disney film, and we're moving a little bit closer towards Pony here. So, this is a good one because we've got some halfway decent behind-the-scene images, and a lot of the techniques they used for this film was combining 3D environments with 2D character animation, but with like complex camera moves, they still had to animate the character by hand. So one of the things they did, and this is a technique that I like to use, and I'll show you in one of my projects in a few minutes, is, if you can see my mouse cursor down here, it's a really chunky, you can't click the slide, it moves it forward. Really chunky image. It's really low quality, and that's just because I wasn't able to find anything higher quality. But you can see there's a wireframe model of a horse here, and then the animator is drawing over that. You can see the line work over here. This up here is a 3D model, and this is line work and a 2D animation over the 3D model that is in the same shot. So it transitioned between in the same shot, and these horses in the background are CG characters. Yeah, it did use the same, Treasure Planet did use the same deep canvas technology as CaptainHoers is saying in the chat. Which cost Disney, yeah, it cost them a lot of money, marketing.
Yeah. I mean, there's a neat video essay if you want to learn more about Treasure Planet, by Breadsword.
Yes, so Breadsword. Great.
Go watch that.
Great video essay.
Later.
Okay.
Watch the rest of this and then watch that.
This is supposed to be about ponies, so let's get into some of the things that have actually been done in Friendship is Magic in the My Little Pony movie. Unfortunately, when it comes to Friendship is Magic, there's pretty much only one example as far as I know, which is the 3D character models they used for the Timberwolves. And there's a lot of problems with these. Let me find my notes on these. I know it's pretty obvious, but okay. So, you know, I'm pretty sure, Minty, did you say you read somewhere that they used 3ds Max?
That's what I've heard, but I think there was on Twitter, and that's pretty much it.
I mean,
it could have been done in Maya.
It could have been anything. It could have been Maya, 3ds Max. But
I like
basically,
how you can see the polygons.
Yeah, you can see the polygons right here, and on the leaves, even on like the eyebrow leaves. But they're really low polygon models that they just have flat textures on, with no lighting, and then they have it render outlines. And the funny thing about this is it seems like it would have been relatively trivial to go back in and color these outlines to match the style, because the biggest problem, at least I find, when I first watched this, I wasn't really an animator, so I wouldn't have had an eye for it, but I didn't notice that these were 3D models, and I'm sure most of the audience didn't either. But a lot of what separates it from the rest of the show is all of the outlines are black. And it just seems like it would have been such a trivial thing to make them colored, but that's the main separator here, at least. The 3D models actually, you know, they work okay, especially for, yes, you're right. You're right. They did use 3D a bunch in the 2017 movie. I'm actually about to get to that. So let's move on to...
I was just going to say, having worked in TV animation, the idea that they would just like have a completely different pipeline and a completely different software for like one element of one episode is
one
really
element of one episode. It's kind of perplexing. Especially, yeah, it's perplexing. I don't know.
A strange decision from a strange time. Anyway, continue.
So the movie 2017. Boulder did Rainbow Road Trip. Yeah, that's true. The opening sequence includes a lot of 3D models. But unfortunately, when I looked for behind-the-scenes material on the MLP movie, there is the 22-minute TV show length special that aired on Discovery Family. And in the entirety of that entire special, which is mostly just talking heads, there is a single behind-the-scenes 3D shot, and it's this blocking shot, which is... Like, I didn't even know that they were doing 3D blocking for the movie, so it's still interesting, but this isn't final at all. This is just, like... I'm not even... Yeah, anyway, it's not final. None of these models were used. This is just blocking. And... the best part is, the only quote we have from... The only quote we have from that is... Let me find it here. The most helpful thing we have is this single sequence, and Kathy Westlock, who we all know is an expert in animation, saying that audiences will enjoy, quote unquote, the multi-dimensionality of the animation with, get this, the latest effects. And Kathy, I gotta say, we really did appreciate the outer glow layer style on this lightning. It was you know, when Photoshop came out in 1999, I think that was, or whatever, when layer styles came out in 1999 in Photoshop, I think that was really pushing the bar for a 2017 movie. So now we've got a little bit of history using 2D and 3D together. I'm going to show some of my behind-the-scenes files, some of the ways that I, at home, literally in my parents' basement, I'm able to do the same techniques that studios were doing 20 years ago. So let's get into that. So this first one is pretty old now, and I show it a lot, but it holds up pretty well, and that's because I wasn't leaning a whole lot on my artistic ability and more on the technical aspects of this. But let's see, does it play the animation?
Take 4.
It does not play the animation, so I'm gonna skip. No, I'm not gonna skip. Let's just play it. You can go find it on my YouTube channel. I don't want to run myself out of time. So this is a whole behind the scenes video of an animation that I did for the Doors 3 collaboration that Yasho and Digivi put together a few years ago. and it's just going to go through some of the things I did. I had tracking markers on a piece of paper on my desk. Then I did 3D tracking. This is where the 3D comes in. I had a CGI pencil that was animated to look like a real pencil. And then here's the 2D animation, which I did in Flash. And then I hand drew the animation over my Flash animation onto paper, color matched it with the original lighting from the shot, tracked it to the camera in After Effects, and added the magic effects and glow. And finally, well, here's a little bit of the audio, but let's just skip that. In the final composite, we've got a bunch of components, and again, this is really light and a little bit abstract compared to what I was talking about, but it's still a little bit interesting in combining 2D and 3D. So here's the 3D pencil, and then we've got the 2D animation and the live action sort of back footage here. That's the whole animation. So a little bit light on the 2D 3D. Oh, 3 minutes warning. All right, I'm almost out of time, so let's go fast. Speed run. Okay, so this animation is a few seconds long, so I can play it. And wow, that is loud. But basically, this is pretty similar to Deep Canvas. It's what I did was I did a really rough paint over of a 3D model here based on the lighting reference, and then projected a texture and then used the software called EBSynth to track the texture. There's another very rough paint over that I used to get the pony in the background there. I'm speedrunning this. Here's some 3D that I used with stick figures, and now we're done. Thank you guys for coming. I skipped like half of my content there, but it's okay. It's okay. You can go ahead and, if you guys have anything to say, you can go ahead and follow us on YouTube, or me or Minty on Twitter, or go check out CaptainHoers' projects on Tumblr. And there are the links.
Yeah, Patreon and YouTube and stuff. And yeah. Okay. As far as I know, we have time for questions. We've just had our 1 minute warning, so let's do lightning round. What inspired you to start making animations? Homestuck. What about you guys?
My Little Pony. Partially
Right,
Minty and
animations on
CaptainHoers,
Newgrounds.
actually. Minty and CaptainHoers were actually big inspirations of mine, so it's kind of an honor
Oh,
to
okay.
be on
Cool.
the panel with
Neat.
them.
Oh my gosh.
I'm not even joking. I'm not joking. When I saw the fan animations, especially you and Minty and everyone else, that's what got me into animation.
Neat. Intel says, how is the transition from 3ds Max to Toon Boom? I've only used 3ds Max. That is one for you guys.
I've only used Blender because I'm poor and I've never worked in a studio.
I mostly use Maya. Toon Boom still works with Maya. It's a very, very, very annoying pipeline that doesn't work properly. But yeah, it's there.
Yeah, I've used Toon Boom, but not 3ds Max. So, I don't actually like Toon Boom that much, but I seem to be in the minority on that one, so I will not die on that hill.